Hello from Cambridge. I am back. I'm Kendra from Redgate, and I am here with
Grant Fritchie from Redgate Software.
And we want to talk to you a little bit about monitoring. Grant is about to talk to you about 3 ages of monitoring.
No, 3 ages of provisioning.
3 ages of provisioning.
Yes, the third age.
That's right.
I'm here to talk to you about the third age.
There are 3 ages of provisioning. We actually are not yet in, how many ages of monitoring do we have? I feel like we're in the first stage of monitoring.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
But we have a survey right now that we actually want you to take about monitoring. There is a reason that I brought up monitoring. The survey is at redgate.com/monitoring survey. And you still have a couple of days left to take the survey. And there are a few reasons that I think it's really important to take this survey. First of all, we are running a survey on this, and there's not a lot of good sources about what people are monitoring, what practices are with monitoring, why they're doing it.
How long does it take? How much time do you spend troubleshooting? How much, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all kinds of fun stuff. I mean, it's important information, and we publish it.
It's true.
We did last year.
Yep. And so we're going to do it again this year. And what this means is that you can help establish what is normal. And if you fill out the monitoring survey, you will get by email the results of it before anyone else. So you'll get to find out what do other DBAs, developers, and IT pros see as their biggest challenges over the coming year. Now, last year, the #1 thing that people saw as their biggest challenge was migrating to the cloud. So my question is, in terms of prediction, do you still think that's going to be #1? Do you still think, you still think that's the biggest pain?
Number one with a bullet.
It's not getting easier.
No, it's not getting any easier. And there's more people doing it.
That's true. But do things like managed instances make this easier? Because now I have to change, if I want to use a service in the cloud, I don't have to change as much code.
Yeah, I mean, I can do cross-database queries. Yeah, it's gonna be hard.
It's still gonna be hard.
It's still gonna be hard.
There's other things where you can find out more information too, whether or not you're planning on moving to the cloud. You can find out things like, how much time do your peers spend on examining SQL Server health? So if, for instance, you look at that number and you are, in terms of the time you have to performance tune, if you're way below average, you've got a case you can make from that.
Yeah. I mean, you're also going to find out at what point do other organizations move away from manual to buying third-party tools? Because there's a point at which you decide spending this money saves me time.
Right.
And that's the one thing we can't make more of. You can make more money, you can't make more time. I mean, it's tough.
And knowing what other people are doing in terms of justifying costs, that can make it easier for you and your manager to help say, hey, it is actually normal for a business of our size and our scale to do it this way. But, okay, so we may be in the first stage of monitoring, but we have multiple ages of provisioning. And Grant, our evangelist pirate, is going to talk to you more about those. So on with the show.
Thank you.
Get him, Grant.
All right, let's get it going. So I am going to be talking to you about environment provisioning, the third age. So my name is Grant Fritchie. I do work for Redgate Software, and I would like to talk to you, not just here remotely. This is my contact information. If you've got questions after today, stop by my blog, get in touch with me via email, go by my YouTube channel, get a hold of me on Twitter. I want to try to help out. So if you've got questions on this topic or any other monitoring, query tuning, get in touch. I would love to try to help you out. So you've got the material here, so talk to me and we'll see what we can do. So let's talk about provisioning. Now the very concept of provisioning is really simple. We've got a production server with 1 or 100 databases. We have 100 production servers with 1 or 100 databases each. We've got all these things, and we need to provision our non-production environments with production-like data. So how do we go about this? Well, I mean, the basic concepts are really easy. First off, we're going to copy the databases in some fashion. What that looks like, we can talk about. But we have to get that done. You have to move the databases somehow. Again, there's 100 different ways we could address it, and we're going to start talking about some of those here a little later. You have to replace the sensitive data. I have got a story I will share. I've got a couple of stories I will share. but you have to replace the sensitive data. Now, the reason we have to do this is because, one, it's just common sense, and two, there are compliance issues and a growing compliance regime that we have to meet to ensure that we are not violating laws and regulations from around the world. So it's not simple, it's not straightforward. This has to get done. Obviously, we're going to have to modify the configuration. There's no way in the world dev looks exactly like production. There's going to be changes to security. There's going to be changes to the logins. There's going to be additional stuff, things you take off, things you add. There's going to be modifications that are necessary for this process, and it's going to be a fundamental part of your provisioning. Then, of course, we have to deal with the fact that you're deploying software. I mean, the whole reason we're provisioning non-production environments is to test before a release, is to test code that we've written, is to write code. There's reasons we need to get down to these non-production environments to provision them and get them ready for the development and methodologies that we have to go through. So you've got to then deploy all the changes that you're making to the structures after you've done the provision. And then finally, you really want to validate that things worked, right? Did that deployment work? Do we still have data in the database? All of these kinds of things. So these are the basic tasks for provisioning a data environment. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? But the thing is that what we're really talking about is progression. You know, it's not, no one walks in, you know, you don't come out as, you know, a full-on farmer. You have to go through a process of learning about things. And the way you learn is, you know, you start off as a hunter, you know, you move with mankind into hunter-gathering, and then you move into doing full-blown farming. And this is, you know, more or less the third age is to become a farmer. And so, you know, we're going to talk about these three ages and how they apply to what we do in IT. I mean, because that's really what it's all about is what are we doing in IT? So let's take the first age. You know, we're straight up hunters. We're talking about the concept, just the full-blown concept of hunting. Means we are completely dependent upon being able to go out into the woods, track down Bambi, and then bring Bambi back home. You know, that is absolutely what's necessary to get this job done. You have to be able to do this. So how does it work when you are a completely Paleolithic person who is a hunter and dependent upon that meat to get through the day? How are you doing that as an IT person? Well, bash it till it works, right? Just slam it up inside the head as needed until it works. I've got a story about that and I'll get to it. But the real issue is that you don't know enough about the environment that you're working with. You don't know enough about IT. This is usually a very immature part of the process. This is when we are junior DBAs and there are no senior DBAs. This is when we're a new company and we're just exploring the space and figuring out how to get things done. This is the beginning of things. And when we are doing this, what are we doing? We're doing manual change processing. How does manual change processing work? I don't know. I've got a database. I made some code changes. You made some code changes. Everybody else made some code changes. Let's go look at it and figure out if we can see which parts are changed. And then we will try to create a script. It's going to be fairly manual. And then we'll just run that in production. It'll be fine. Okay, but that means a manual deployment process, meaning you are building the scripts. These fingers have to type to create scripts. I have to go through manual cleanup processing, meaning after moving a database down from production, if I'm at all on top of my game, I'm going to clean that data to ensure that I'm not, I don't know, for example, sending emails to my entire client list by accident. Let me tell you a quick story for those who haven't heard it. Once, many years ago, I was working for a company who was very much in the hunter process. Very much in the hunter process. We did not do anything that looks like automation. It was all manual. And we had a requirement that the developers get a copy of the development data of the production database. Because what's the best data to develop against? Production. So I was tasked with giving a developer a production database. Now, I was a very, very junior DBA at the time. I think it was my first year as a DBA. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know to argue. I just gave a copy of production to the dev team because that's what we did. That was the requirement. That was the methodology. Back up the database, hand them the backup, walk away. Heck, I didn't have to restore it, so it's a win. So I give the developer the database, and that developer is working on some automated email processing from our system. That developer also had a sense of humor, probably an inappropriate sense of humor, because they chose to attach an image to the test email that they were sending with their code. And the image that they chose was adult themed. Let's just put it there and not get me in trouble with HR. An adult themed image was attached to an email that was against our production database. And I had not cleaned out the emails. So we sent porn to our entire list. Oh, did I say porn? Oh, I'm sorry. I meant adult themed pictures. Yes, to our entire email list. It was a nightmare. It was really, really not cool. Now, I didn't get fired because our standards were that we did this. The developer didn't get fired either, which was really weird because I sure would have let him go. But anyway, that's the hunter process. What we're talking about is a minimal aspect of development, a minimal aspect of an understanding of what we have to do. It's an immature state. It is that beginning state. And that's where a lot of people are at today. They are not doing things in an automated fashion. They are bashing it till it works. This is the situation you get into where, to tell a friend's story, you drop the development database because you need to restore it. But the backup was bad. So now you got to go take another backup. But hey, you know what? The backups take 4 hours. Oh no, the dev team is offline for 4 hours because you've dropped the database before you were sure that the backup was good. Oh, and by the way, the restore takes 4 hours, so the dev team's actually offline for the whole day. Cool, guys, go home. We're done. It's good. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh no, that's bad. I mean, not as bad as the other thing, but still, you got to think the dev environment is production for the developers. So anything we do to them, anything we're hurting them on, is very much going to be painful and very much going to cause problems. So, we've got to get away from this. And so that is the hunter challenge. I mean, the fact is that if you're doing a hunter process, if you are doing things manually, it's not repeatable. You're going to mess up. If you don't have a checklist at least to follow, and I've got a story on checklists in a minute. If you don't have a checklist at least to follow, you're not going to get a repeatable process. If you're not working on automation, you're not going to get a repeatable process. I know you're all smarter than I am. God knows you're all smarter than I am. But you're not that smart. You're going to make mistakes, right? My whole thing in any development process is take me out of the cycle as much as possible because I'm going to mess up. So when we're doing things manually, we are error prone. We are going to fat finger. We're going to thumb it. We're going to mess up. That's going to occur. When we are doing the manual process, we're spending a lot of time. A lot of time. It's wrong. It's bad. Another quick story on that. We were just barely starting to get into some automation, just scratching the surface and figuring it out. But we hadn't quite gotten it. And so what we were doing was we were running a backup every night before we did deployments. Most of the time we did deployments on Fridays, which was awesome because the backup would take about 3 hours. So we would, go to the pub, right? Start the backup and go to the pub. Have a couple of beers, come back, check, yes, backup's completed, awesome, let's start the deployment. Or backup didn't complete, or backup failed, start it again, go back to the pub. By the time we started our actual deployments, it was late at night, and we were very tired and or inebriated. And so we started making more mistakes because we were still doing a manual process. And let's face it, this is unsafe. It's not simply about sending dirty pictures to people. It is about violating the GDPR. It is very much about getting outside of the CPPA or the WPA. Oh, you guys know what those are, right? California Privacy and Protection Act, the Washington Privacy Act. Those are GDPR-style laws applicable inside the United States. And by the way, the California one takes effect in 2020. And that means you've got just less than, because it's what, second or third, just less than 9 months to get it going. So get going, guys, get going, because that's coming your way. And we ran into lots of disk space issues because we were moving data everywhere, multiple copies, multiple backups, you know, backup 1, backup 2, backup 3. You guys do that? No one does that, right? I'm the only one. Please tell me I'm the only one. I'm not. I know I'm not because I've seen some of your disk drives. Yeah. So you're filling these things up because you're not setting up a process that has automation. This is the Hunter challenge. Everybody agree with this? Everyone cool? Cool. So at some point, we start to get smarter about things. We're not going to be able to live on Bambi alone. Thumper is there, right? But there's also berries that we can pick, and there's other things we can do. We can move into the hunter-gatherer stage. We don't have to be completely dependent upon a successful hunt. We can move into where we've got other sources of food. And the same thing goes when we start talking about the process, the hunter-gatherer process for this type of provisioning. And what we have to start talking about is we move towards automation. We start to recognize that, okay, you know, before we hand the developers that backup, I should run a restore, clean the email out, and then do a backup of that new database and then give them that backup. Fix that problem until you find out that there's another thing and another thing and another thing. And then you keep adding to that script that you're building out, and which, by the way, takes longer and longer to run because you've got more and more data in process. And yeah, it all gets very difficult. We also, you know, we start to bring in agent jobs, you know, like let's throw, you know, what if we scheduled things? You know, I mean, instead of just running it, you know, everyone has to push a button. Do you ever do the testing? Oh, and this is fun. You ever do the testing where you go into the room and you get 20 people and they all load up the app and they all put things on their laptop and they all go, okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Did anybody? I'm the only one? Probably not. Yeah, that we did testing that way. It's no. We're moving into the concept of basic scripts. And so we're moving away from, you know, the days where we were doing everything manually, but we're still not fully embracing the concept of automation, right? We want to get to the point where we're trying to automate ourselves out of a job. And so what are you looking at with hunter-gatherer issues? Well, we're still looking at long processing times. Worse yet, and this is my story on checklists, let's say you've got a checklist, right? So you've got some repeatability. You remember that you've got the checklist. And assuming you follow it religiously, and although I gotta say, after a visit to the pub, I sometimes miss steps, you know, just glancing 1, 2, 6, yeah, it's all good. No, you mess up, or worse yet, and this happened not once, not twice, but 3 times. You put your checklist up on the board and you're following it religiously. You've definitely got it down because we're doing this, you know, we're in a much more mature environment now. And the boss comes in, and this happened 3 times to me. The boss comes in, how are things going? And leans up against the checklist, wiping out some of the steps that we had written up there. And then we're going, oh no, which one were we on? What was the, oh, and then we've got to try to recreate it, and we messed up. And it happened 3 different times until we had to move the board because we knew he was going to lean right there. So we had to move the board. Now, after we moved the board, things were fixed. It's still fundamentally unsafe. We're still going to cause problems. And we're still dealing with the fact that we have lots and lots and lots and lots of disk space issues. When we were at this point in our automation process, we had varying between 5 and 8 times the amount of data in dev that we had in production. Why? Because we had that many copies of the database in dev. And there's a long, long story behind that one. I'm not going to get into all of it, but we had 5 to 8 times the storage. Now, the SAN vendor loved us to death, right? Because we're spending 8 times the money in this one environment to the other environment, and we're still spending money over here because we're growing like mad. But yeah, they were crazy about us. The hunter-gatherer challenges are still severe. So what we've got to do is we've got to move away from hunter and hunter-gatherer. We need to move to where we have a consistent, level playing field that we know is going to be largely the same. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Farming is hard. I grew up on a farm. I know just how difficult it can be. However, it's a heck of a lot easier than hunting only. It's a heck of a lot easier than hunting and gathering. You definitely are moving into a civilized environment as you move towards farming. And so let's talk about that farming environment. Let's talk about, you know, golden fields of grain all in front of us so we can make beer. You know, that's a great thing. You know, that's part of civilization right there. So what are we going for here? When we start talking farming, we are talking about going to a fully automated process. Take me out of the equation. Now, when I started doing DevOps, and it started about 12, 15 years ago, when we first started kicking it off and really doing it full-blown DevOps. It wasn't even called DevOps then. But when we started doing it, and we started doing this concept of a full deployment, a complete automation of every single aspect of the deployment, and by the way, a full automation of every aspect of the provision, I went from supporting 2 dev teams to supporting 8 dev teams. Now, you might think that, like, what does that mean? You had less work? No. That means I had a lot more work. But I was able to support more and do more because I went through automation. Because I was doing so much automation, I didn't automate myself out of a job. I tried to. I thought I had. Once I'd automated it, so when I was working with the 2 teams, I'm sitting around going, God, I wonder what else I can do all day. Well, the boss figured it out pretty quick and assigned me more dev teams. And so I started some work more on automation because I don't want to have to actually labor. I want to be lazy. And that then finds out that you're doing that stuff. Further, you want to be lazy, right? So you want to make sure that it's self-service. You want to make sure the developers can just ask for it. Not ask for it. I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. They can just get it. Self-service. They push a button, the provision database arrives at their desktop. You also want to make sure that because you're doing automation, it's going to be repeatable. Granted, the first time you write the script, it may fail horrifically. Fine, fix it. Because that's the goal of automation, is the ability to make those adjustments and make those changes over time so that your process is completely repeatable and safe. Best of all, once you create an automated process with code and documentation around the code, you are actually going to be able to meet audits in a way that you could not meet them in any other age. If you're trying to do things as a hunter or a hunter-gatherer, when the audit people come in and say, well, how do you ensure that production data does not arrive in hands that it's not supposed to have it? You go, well, we've got this automated process in which nothing leaves this area until it's been cleansed. This is the cleansing process. This is the documentation on it. Here's how it runs. And the only data that ever leaves this area is the stuff that's gone through this process. And therefore, the audit's over. The auditors hate it when you've got things wrapped up in a bow. That's the worst thing in the world. They go away and leave you alone. They get gleeful when you're a hunter-gatherer or a hunter and you're going, oh, really? Are we supposed to do that? So you get to that place where you arrive at it. Now, today, oh, and I forgot to fix that font. Anyway, today we arrive at the place where Redgate tools can help us get to be farmers. We want to get to a place where we're using tools so we're farming. And the tools we're using is we're talking about SQL provision, your own scripts, and then database change control. Now, when we talk about provision, what I'm talking about is clone. The ability to move a database one time and then clone it 5, 10, 100 times. Fast and small. So we're no longer using 8 times the production data, we're just using 1 extra storage on the production data, or maybe 2, depending on your process. There's various ways you could set this up. We're applying data masker so that we've got a full-blown masking process running automatically and completely within our script, completely within our automation tools, so that you're not doing anything manually. And again, we've got the full-blown audit for the auditors when they come along. Your scripts, I mean, yeah, why not? You guys have got specialty scripts you're going to need to run when you need to run them. Let's plug them in and use them as necessary to either clean data or modify the configurations, change those security settings, anything you need. And then you talk about change control. Apply things through Redgate. You know, we've got SQL change automation, or use SSDT, Flyaway, you know, one of the other third-party tools that's out there. You know, these things are what are going to help you arrive at that full-blown, fully automated deployment process. It's all about farming, guys. It's all about moving away from hunting and moving into hunter-gatherer. Okay? That's the plan. So, if we talk about that process, that's going to be ongoing, continual, and never-ending. We're talking about copying the databases. Well, now we're talking about not really copying the databases. We're talking about copying the database one time and then using clone. We're talking about replacing sensitive data. Again, back to the same steps that we talked about before, but now we're going to use masker to ensure that we're masking that data appropriately. We're going to modify the configurations as needed through your scripts, because this is where things get special. You've got logins I can't know about and shouldn't know about, and you're going to make those modifications as necessary. You're going to use source control and a tool to ensure that you've got an automated deployment process, and then you're going to build in testing. Now, testing is something that you'll have to figure out. There's a bunch of ways you can do it, but it is something you'll have to do some work on yourselves to set that up again, because your environment is unique. But then we've arrived at that third age. We are working as farmers. We are not working as hunters or hunter-gatherers. And that's the goal. So the tasks here: copy the database, SQL provision, create an image, and then deliver clones. Images are the tax we pay. We cannot escape the tax. There's no way to get away from it. Death and taxes, right? The two inescapable things. The two issues you're going to run into are death and taxes. Well, we have to pay a tax, and that is creating an image. The clones are the magic, and we'll get to that in a second. You're going to replace sensitive data using SQL provision, because you can invoke the masking definitions that we're going to take a look at here in a second. Modify the configuration. Well, we've got SQL provision, and you can apply templates. Your scripts can be plugged in as needed. I'm not going to show that today, but I'll show you where that would occur. And then you're going to deploy either through SQL change automation or some other tool, and then you're going to test. And like it says, your application here, you're going to have to plug that stuff in on your own. So this is our provisioning process, because of course it's our provisioning process. You can't do it any other way. Although there's some stuff coming in the future I can't wait to talk about. I can't talk about it now. Nuts. Anyway, fun stuff coming. But this right now, this is our process today, and we need to automate it fully to arrive at that farm situation. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to ensure that we are protecting our production environment appropriately, and that we are meeting the regulatory compliance, and that we are moving fast, and that we have a repeatable process, and that we are not a roadblock for development to go as quickly as it possibly can. So this is what we're trying to go for. Let's take a look at the toys. You guys ready? Awesome. So, hang on, I'm old and blind. I need to be able to see. All right, this is not where I wanted to start. This is where I wanted to start. Okay, cool. I've got a simple database here. I'm going to run off of one server. It is a SQL Server 2019 server. I'm demoing something I'm not supposed to demo. Nobody told me no. So I'll beg forgiveness later. That's not a problem. Anyway, this is a SQL Server 2019 database. We're in Azure Data Studio. And let me hit refresh, and you'll see that it's just the AdventureWorks database inside this environment right now. Now, this is not what I would expect to see in your environments. What I would expect to see in your environments are multiple actual servers, multiple virtual servers. And you would be doing provisioning across these multiple servers. It's not all going to one machine like I'm doing here. But from a demo purposes, this just makes things a little easier for me, and I'm lazy. So that's why I'm going to do it this way. But you guys would actually have more than one machine, a QA machine, a staging machine, 3 or 4 or 5 or 100 dev machines, and you would have all these things connected together in some way that you can communicate across them, but they would allow you to deploy this stuff to all of them, not just to the one. All right, let's go over here to Visual Studio and take a look at this stuff. Now I've got some just basic things. I'm setting up database name, clone server, stuff like that. I'm using DBA tools. By the way, if you don't know about DBA tools, go look it up, DBA tools. They are awesome. I'm using a backup DBA database, getting a credential. I may have to, I've got this in here as my safety net. I may have to run this real quick before we do. Actually, I'm gonna be paranoid and run this just in case. I'm getting a credential. I'm defining the database. I'm putting it out into a particular directory. I've got a particular instance. I'm doing a full backup, and I'm initializing the backup. Is this the best way to do all the backups? Not necessarily. There's any number of other things you may want to be thinking about through your backups and backup processes. But I just want to show you guys soup to nuts, database backup to start, okay? From there, I'm going to connect up to my clone server. Now I've got a clone server running locally. I'm going to create a temporary server. I'm going to get the clone instance based off of the machine. I'm going to go to where my backups are. I'm going to get the DB data image, and then I'm going to create a new clone image. No big deal. I just have to tell it where it's coming from and where it has to go. I am also going to set a masking set on this database. So I am going to use the email masking set. This is for demo purposes. Again, very simplistic, but I'm going to make sure we're not sending porn. We're going to make sure that there are no bad things coming out from the email. So that's going to get cleaned up. And then I'm going to create an image. And the image basically just has to have a name, the server instance, where the backup file location is, the destination, the modifications. In short, all the stuff we just defined through this PowerShell script. So let's go ahead and run this. And it's F5. There we go. What? Oh, hang on. Ugh, what did I do wrong? Till the power, what? Cannot debug or run a PowerShell script until the PowerShell. Wait for the PowerShell finish to start trying again. Okay, hang on one second. Let's do it this way. Let's restart it. Ha ha ha. Cheating. I like cheating. Pirate. There we go. It's back online. Let's try it again. Uh-oh. It said starting. Hang on. Please tell me you're still not failing. Come on. Oh, no, it's going there. All right. Whew. Oh, paranoia. All right, cool. Yeah, no big deal. Cool. It's running. Awesome. Yay. How do I know it's running? Well, let's go over here and take a look at this. So what's going on is I'm running the full backup live for you guys, and then I'm going to start to create images on the thing, and it's all going to run automatically, and it was running, so it better still be running. It's running because it says stop or pause, so I know it's running. All right, no output yet, so it should be going. Come on, it should appear here. This, by the way, is the GUI. I'm only using the GUI to illustrate what's happened or what is happening, although at the moment, nothing is happening. I ran this script like 9 times before I came in here. It was good. It all worked. Figures that I show up here and it messes up. Come on, baby. Don't leave me like this. Let's give it a second because it should just kick in here. Oops, wrong one. Come on. All right, I'm going to punt here in a second. Oh, it's possible. Let's stop that. Because, yeah, I did get paranoid and put that in, didn't I? And it's going to require input. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good catch. All right, let's try it again. I'm sure you're right, actually. I'm just not sure where the output went to, because every other time it spat it out nice and neatly. I don't care. That's fine. Come on, go ahead. Let's go over here and check. Backup should take only a couple minutes, and then this should kick off. The whole plan was to talk through this while I was talking to you guys. It should still work, though. Hang on. Uh-oh. Well, I'm not getting any output, so if it's failing, it's not telling me that it's failing. Oh. Demo demons. I can't believe it. Wow. This is depressing. Come on.
Run instantly window rather than VS Code?
Let's try it. Where are we? Scripts, /PowerShell, /provision. All right, sorry, PowerShell, ls. Dot, is it dot /, right? Create image.ps. Never type in demos, guys. Cool. Other than that comment, I didn't make a single modification to this thing. It should just work, because it was working before. Yay! Woo! Awesome. All right. I feel better about life, and the flop sweat can stop now. Cool. So what's going on is this thing is going through the text. Remember I said that there's one thing that it had to do that was unavoidable, and that's to create an image. Now, an image is very similar to a backup. What it's doing is more or less a page-by-page copy. As a matter of fact, when you create an image, it's not a complete backup test, but it's really close to a complete backup test, especially if you then immediately create a clone from that image. If you create an image and create a clone, it's effectively a test of the backup. This is a way to validate my backups. Now, in addition to running the backup, in addition to creating the image, this is also on the fly cleaning the data. It's not a second or an extra step in the process. It's a process right involved directly as it builds the image. And I'm just so happy that it's running. You don't understand just how ecstatic I am at the moment. Thank you for the suggestion, because that sure did save this presentation. Since we'll be also running another PowerShell script in a minute. Let's just wait 1 second for this to finish up. It won't take very long. There it goes. This is so good. I am so happy. Your images and clones are going to appear down below as soon as they finish. It's going to finish up just in a second here. And yes, you can monitor the activity from here to see what's going on. It shows all the stuff I was doing all day long. You can see today, all successful runs. Just want to point that out because I'm very frustrated that it suddenly decided to stop working. That was weird. Anyway, this will finish up in 1 second here. It's just doing the data cleansing right at the end. Come on, I said you would finish up in a second. And by the way, this is taking longer than it took before. Yay. Awesome, gosh. Now, the only reason I show the GUI in this case, and oh, by the way, here, let's go back to the code and just show you that it did finish and see it's completed. You see the output from the backup, so it created a full backup, and it's just a small backup because it was supposed to be quick for you guys, but it wasn't very quick, was it? Anyway, it has now created this image. You guys can see it down here. And so it's based on the thing that I told it to do. It's got the name, it's got the date and the time, so you guys can see that this was created live just for you, as if there was any doubt, considering how badly it went south. And with this, I can create templates, I can create clones, and I can do that all through the GUI. You're not going to do this through the GUI though, right? We're talking about being farmers. We're talking about using the tools to automate our processes. So let's go back and take a look at this bit of code. Now again, I'm connecting up to my local clone server here. Is that big enough? Let me just make sure. I'm connecting up to my local clone server here and setting the server, setting the instance, and yes, it is a 2019 instance. And then I'm connecting up to clone, and I'm setting the server instance all through PowerShell, getting the image name and based in it the same way as I did the year, month, day, so it's coming from the same place it is before. Getting that clone image, setting the prefix ADW for AdventureWorks. I'm in a mood. 10 is too little. I'm going to create 15 clones real quick. And all I'm doing is using the clone prefix to create a new clone and then waiting for that to complete. And then it's looping through it 15 times. Okay? So let's do this thing. Oops. Don't type up there, Grant. Create. I've been working in Linux a lot lately, and so case is starting to bother me a lot more than it used to. All right, so now that is running. Whew. Where would we go to look for this? Well, let's go over here to Azure Data Studio. And let's refresh the databases. And you'll notice we've already got ADW0 and ADW1. And if we hit the refresh, oops, come on. So there's 2 already over here on the GUI. Yeah, it's running, cool. Let's hit the refresh again. Right, there's 3. So they're probably taking about 15 seconds or so per, yeah, there it goes, 4. And so this will run and we will end up with 15 different databases. Yeehaw. Now, let's go in and run a query on this. What is the table I want? And yeah, these are full-blown database tables, by the way. Email, right? Person.email address. And if we run this query, we're going to see, we've got this, ACNA HQD at dampening.biz. These are not real email addresses, and we can validate this because all we've got to do is change this over to the original AdventureWorks database and run the same query again, and you can see Ken0@adventureworks.com, Terry0@adventureworks.com, Dylan0@adventureworks.com. We have masked the data, and so now I have got, how many are we up to at this point? I've got 10 different databases already. There's 5 more to go, but I've got 15 databases fully automated, completely, going without any kind of intervention from me except for the fact that I started the script. So when we start talking about self-provisioning, well, nightly we go in and we schedule this script. We run our backups and we create our images. That is our tax. That is the one copy that we have to make of the database. We take it from backups. Why? Because that's the safer way to do it. Can we connect up to your servers and pull those images down? Sure we can. But I want to show you the safer method because we can go directly to your backups, which is a nice, clean, secure way to get this done. And then from there, I've got my self-service automated provisioning because this data is clean because it's gone through the clean process that we define through our masking set, and it will then run. So now if we were to do this manually, let me go back over to the GUI. We can go right in here and say create clone. And it says, would you like to modify the clone? Well, yeah, I want to choose a template. Well, there's no templates available with my chosen image. Okay, fine. Let's skip the modifications. Where are we going with it? We can go to one of our servers. What kind of automation do we use? Hit next, review, and say create the clone. Now, at the modification step, let's go back. We can decide to get into this thing and run scripts, and this is where we would supply them. So if you want to make modifications to these databases prior to creating the clone, this is how you can get it done. So this can make it so that you create certain logins for QA, certain logins for dev, and get away from the whole process of having to do that manually, and it's part of creating the clone. So we can set that all up, but we can also do it as we did it here, fully automated, completely run. So this is finished running now, so let's go back over to ADS, just so we can see all 15 databases, because I just wanted 15 this time. Oh, it still only did 10. Oh, I must not have saved it after I made the modification. Oops. So it only did the original 10 anyway. My bad. Sorry about that. But that's it. Now we can see from the activity, it's going to show us all the clones that we did, and it's also going to show you how fast they were occurring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all at 11:57, and how fast was that going? Pretty darn fast. How much space do these things take up? Nothing. I mean, nothing. Because these things are clones. So I didn't move the gigabytes of storage that are in my AdventureWorks database, because by the way, I ran Atom Mechanics Big Adventure scripts. If you guys didn't see it earlier, here, let me show you. In the tables. Big product. That's just a way to make some large database tables inside of Azure. Inside of AdventureWorks. It's great script, by the way. Look it up. Anyway, because I ran that, my AdventureWorks database is a little bit bigger than the standard AdventureWorks database. But you see that it's all completely automated, and so we've stepped away from all the problems that we did have in our, prior engagements with provisioning. And so we're fully into using tools to solve these problems and stepping away from the process. And so we are no longer looking at, being a hunter-gatherer or farmer. We're talking about moving from a manual process to a semi-automated process to a complete, fully automated process. That is our goal, is full automation. And so when we talk about compliant database DevOps at Redgate, the automation is the key. Monitoring is so important. Knowing what's happening on your servers is just inescapable. And please do go and fill out the survey that we're doing on monitoring. And protecting your data is so very important, and standardizing your team-based development so you're working out of source control is so very important. but all of that is keyed off of the automation. If you are not going through the automation process, you're really not going to be able to successfully deliver DevOps. DevOps cannot be, we've assigned it to Peggy and now we're done. You must do more. It involves lots of automation. Now, we are not done. Before we go, I want to make sure I talk about something coming up. Navigating the New World, a week of online events with Redgate and PASS. Yeah, for those who don't know, I am the PASS president, and I don't mind saying that out loud. Monday, May 20th through Friday, May 24th, Data Privacy Week, we're going to be talking about GDPR, WPA, CPPA, HIPAA, SOX, FERPA. Did I get them all? HIPAA, SOX, FERPA, WPA, CPPA. The New York law is called SHIELD. You know, everybody against it is called? Who knows? Come on. Who's against SHIELD? Hydra. Anyway. All right. So, before we go, I would like to point out that this is an experiment. What you're seeing here in the picture is an experimental satellite, in theory, farm, fully automated with robots. I know it looks like silent running, and for most of you, you don't know what I just said because that movie is old. But trust me, this is a picture of a test farm where they're doing full automation of a type of farming that they might be able to do in space. So farming is not old school, farming is new school. Are there any questions? Okay, how should I get started with PowerShell? I'm going to quote a friend. Sean McCown said to me, it doesn't really matter that your script is pretty. It doesn't really matter how you wrote it. What matters is that it works. So how should you get started with PowerShell? Start writing it. The best thing I can tell you is if you've done something twice today, see if you can figure out a way to write it in PowerShell. I would also strongly encourage you to take a look at DBA tools. It's not going to make learning PowerShell easier, but it is going to make using PowerShell to administer SQL Server radically easier. So I would strongly recommend you take a look at that. But other than that, it's just get going and dig in. There is a book, PowerShell in a Month of Lunches. Fantastic resource. But then other than that, there's plenty of Stairways series on SQL Server Central. There's a whole bunch of different articles on Simple Talk. Go and read those things, but the best thing you can do is start writing scripts. Identify that thing that you've done twice today manually and figure out if you can automate it. That's how I would get started with PowerShell. Let's see. How do I modify permissions with clones using SQL Provision? I don't want prog logins, I want dev logins. Yes. So what do? That's where you insert your own manual script. So whereas I used a masking script for modifications, you guys can insert a manual script that does anything you need it to do. It's built right into the tool. I showed you where it was when we were walking through. If you use that, you can just put in a T-SQL that does whatever you need. Drop the production logins, create the dev logins, fix the whole login ID issue. You can clean those things up. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could do through those scripts that will ensure that what you're moving out of your production environment from that backup into the clones that you're going to create in the multiple environments down below. Remember, multiple environments. We frequently demo this with one environment, but that's not the model. The model is multiple environments. And you can ensure that all that stuff is automated down to that level. All right, another question. Did SQL Provision generate your PowerShell scripts? Nope. SQL Provision did not generate my PowerShell scripts. I wrote my PowerShell scripts. However, I did write my PowerShell scripts based on the PowerShell scripts supplied by Redgate in the Provision documentation. And they are very good PowerShell scripts. They provide a lot of information on how to get things done. Best of all, the way they're written out is very much about a problem solution kind of thing. I want to do X. How do I do it? And then they show the PowerShell script that gets that done. I did make modifications to them because I wanted to show the backup. I didn't want to just assume a backup was there. And I inserted my own masking stuff. So I combined a few scripts and did some other modifications. But basically, that was it. And see, where did that backup come from again? Where did the backup come from again? How many times do I have to say it? DBA Tools. It is a fantastic, free, open source, community-driven PowerShell scripts that will make administering SQL Server, Azure SQL Database. Do they support managed instance? I don't know. I don't know if they support managed instance. Azure SQL Database, SQL Server, most versions, any version that you can connect to from PowerShell, will make it a whole lot easier to administer that stuff if you get involved with that as soon as you can. So DBA Tools, and then learn PowerShell. You will have to learn some PowerShell. It's not going to do everything for you, but you need to learn it anyway. So get involved and get engaged with that. Is there any other questions? What happens if your databases have linked servers and store procedures that use them? Oh boy. Okay, so if those linked servers don't exist on the lower environments, what you're going to have to do is create some that look the same but go to different places, right? Because you don't want to be using production linked servers in non-production environments, because we're going to hit the same issues that we would hit as if we were giving them dirty data. And funny that we use dirty data because it leads to dirty emails. But anyway, you would want to make sure you set that up. If you do that, then it will work. If you don't do that, I promise you, you will get errors. It will cause problems. But not when you restore the clone, only when you run that store procedure. When you run that store proc, it will blow up and you will have errors. But if you fix it and put in the linked servers, then you won't. A good idea would be either to put those things into your PowerShell scripts so that when you're running the creating the clones and retrieving it, it will put that stuff up, or you set it up another way. And another approach, I'm being reminded, I don't mind, I love sharing who's giving me information, is to set up synonyms so that you can use those. That does depend on which version of SQL Server you're on, but still, synonyms is a great way around that to ensure that the connections go to someplace else, even though they look the same. And are there any other questions? Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you check this stuff out, and I hope you make the move. Stop being a hunter, stop being a hunter-gatherer, move into a full-blown farming environment, go to the third age.